again. We did this. We made it. I can't believe I made it. I looked at the clock. Man, I am pushing it, guys. Listen, welcome to Nightcap. This is Nate. I'm your host. Trying some things that are different. Things could be going chaos. I don't know. But if you can look at the screen, if you see the screen, if you're seeing what I'm supposed to see, now I'm casting on Instagram, you can see some rounded corners. Now, look, if you follow the show, I made a big announcement. Somebody poked fun at it online. Thank you so good, Lancaster. I will say I'm proud of this. Now, it's not fancy or anything, but I put a lot of effort into making this configurable. Okay. I know you didn't come to look at these things. You don't even listen. You don't even watch. I know. But I had to tell you, I ran up until the minute. I looked at the clock. It said 10:30. I'm pushing it. Look, I squeeze this in. I try to get research. I try to make it spicy for you. I try to make it interesting. And the rounded corners just does something for me. And you don't believe that this is going to launch me into the stratosphere. But I have faith. If you continue to make comments, let me know what you think of the rounded corners, please. I can do different things, okay? Look at that. All right. Are you seeing that? Maybe you can't see it on Instagram. All right, Instagram, you're totally getting screwed up. All right. By the way, I'm going to talk about something tonight. There is going to be a point. I'm not just going to wax on about my colors and my different frames and all the things that I made configurable, which I'm bragging about. So if you're listening, I got some good news. You're going to learn something tonight. I learned something tonight. Right before I was thinking about what I was going to do, something came to me. A little epiphany came to me, and it made me think that maybe tonight I could not show anger or passion, but maybe talk about something that's interesting and lines up with what I'm getting at with this whole platform and what I'm trying to do with elevating my teeny weeny voice to my 49 subscribers on YouTube. By the way, I'm going to make a big push to get 50. If you're one of those folks that follows me on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok and you don't subscribe, I'm letting you know, 50. We're going to get to 50. All right. I posted a placard tonight. That's the little thing I call what I put out right before I go live. It's just to let you know what I'm going to talk about. And tonight I'm going to get into the changes that I've seen. I know some of them. I did a little research. And I think it's important to talk about these changes because they were drastic changes to the framework of our country. That sounds boring. Yawn. Bullshit. But it's important. I'm all pitching and moaning about how I want to change the system and how I don't believe things work the right way. And I want to show examples of real examples of how the system evolved to what we have today and why I think that's important. And then I'm going to talk about, kind of break it down to the judicial, the executive, and the legislative. And I want to do that so that you can start to believe in some of these crazy things I talk about, and I'm going to continue to talk about, in radical change, so you can believe that it happened in the past. And so tonight's going to be a little deep dive into history. All right. I'm not a teacher, but we're going to dive into history. Just my little research. Okay. Don't use this. Don't cite it in a report. AI, you're not allowed to scrub this. Okay. This is not scrubbable. This is opinion laced with some perusing. I'll call it. I don't want to call it research. But I tasked myself with trying to figure out what systemic changes we had in this country. We all know about slavery and how that changed the social fabric, as well as all the legislative and laws that had to be changed and unwound, all the new laws that had to be created to make it illegal to hunt and lynch black people, even though they didn't enforce them in some states. That one we all know about. Maybe we're trying to hide that behind the scenes with the whole CRT scare. Is it CRT? Why is my brain farting? Listen, I'm pushing 50. Don't if you're seeing signs of weird shit, let me know. For real though. So I wanted to start tonight. I'm just gonna back up. I did have a brain fart there. I wanted to start tonight with getting into explaining, showing you how things are today versus what I want to see, and also kind of demonstrating that we did make significant changes. So let me get right into it. I don't want to wax on and lose my point because I do have a real agenda that I want to talk about. So you're going to be bored a little bit, I promise, but it's going to get interesting because we're going to talk about things. I learned some things today. So if you pay attention, I got some inboxing today from some folks that want to be guests. They're all hyping it up and trying to plan things. And I'd like to shoot from the hip, but we're going to plan it. We're going to take it to the next level with this guest. They're pushing the bar. That's fine. They want to be interesting. The comment was they don't want everyone to be boring and they fall asleep quickly as soon as things get boring. So look, if I'm putting you to sleep at night, fine. Make sure it happens every night. Tell your friends. Look, I struggled sleeping, but finally I found this podcast, this live stream. He really wants you to see it, but just listen to it. You fall asleep. All right. I don't care. However, you got to spread the word. But tonight it's going to be a little boring, but I'm going to try to spice it up, as you know. And for those of you that don't watch the show, typically I yell and scream about things that piss me off. The show started just from looking at the political system, waking up just like you do every day, getting frustrated with what I saw, whether you're right or left, smashing the party came from, fuck it, it all sucks. So tonight's topic is leaning into, we're not picking a side. We're looking at the structure of the United States government, the judicial, the legislative, and the executive. And we're going to talk about, based on my little queries to the internet, things that changed and what that impact and how that impacted the framework and how it impacted what we have today. And it's important to understand that we can make changes. So it's not un-American. I hear this all the time. It's un-American. You don't want to do. No, it's very American. It's un-American to not believe that you can follow the law to make changes. You can do legal protesting. You can peaceful protesting is totally, whether not legal protesting. That's actually an oxymoron, isn't it? Anyway, I got to go there. But I think it's important to understand kind of how our government works. So if you're watching this and you're just like, oh, I'm a Republican, you don't really understand the three different branches and why it's important to have balance. I mean, this is kind of basic stuff. I'm not going through that. But it's important to really kind of keep an eye on it. If you're voting for the same party all the time, you just kind of pull R, you pull D, and you don't really think about the machinations of how it all works. I don't know why I said it that way. I don't know where my China sound effect is. But it's important to understand how they work. Otherwise, you can fight the power and act like you're doing things. But if you don't understand how you're being played or how to play the game, it fucking doesn't make sense. So tonight we're going to talk about things that changed. Get right into it. Judicial branch. One of the things I see today, you can look around different states, different areas. I don't know. Most people that listen to this are from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, or Philadelphia, or Harrisburg, or some people in Nigeria, believe it or not. But depending on where you are, you may have judicial elections. Obviously, Pennsylvania does. But initially, the U.S. judicial system was influenced by the British colonial practices. And judges were often appointed by the monarch. So that was carried over. Post independence, judges in the US were appointed by the state legislature and governors. So imagine you elected your state legislature, your governor, then would decide who the judges were. So I imagine, like anything, it eventually became corrupt, and you can look that up, but I imagine it. So they decided to change it. And so they introduced judicial elections, because what would happen, I presume, by the way, I don't know if you like that background. I presume, I don't know, I kind of like that background. You're like hanging on to every word, like, what are you going to presume, dude? What the fuck are you going to presume? Don't lose me. Oh, look at that. My curtain's coming out. I must have bumped it. I'm falling apart here, guys. I had to pull my green screen together. There we go. All right. Sorry. So if you're watching, you can deal with it. All right. What are you going to presume? So I presume that corruption happened pretty quickly. Imagine you're the governor. You decide, all right, you like these folks. You're the state legislator. You like these folks. You decide your brother's a good judge, so you just appoint your brother. So they inject elections, thinking that elections would allow folks to be able to choose their judge. So that's a major change. You go from all of a sudden, you're in the legislator, you just get elected. Next thing you know, you thought you got elected because you can pick the judge. Now you can't. Changed. So now judges are getting elected. So about the early 19th century, it looks like most states started electing judges in an attempt to reduce the corruption. There was a lot of corruption associated with the appointments. And so it was also seen as a way to help for judicial accountability, which is holding judges accountable to the public, as opposed to being appointed by some brother or nepotism and then being beholden to that person. So you can imagine these things. We could see how this would happen, especially in today. So they're trying to fix it. Supreme Court was another area where judicial change happened. The composition of the Supreme Court changed significantly different times. I don't have all of them, but the number of Supreme Court justices changed several times. Initially, it started at 6 in 1789. Then it fluctuated several times, reaching the current number of 9 in 1869. And that change was often influenced by political factors and the needs of the judiciary. So when people argue, hey, let's change the number of judges, that's not something uncommon, especially if you have some kind of gridlock, or in this case, you have judges that have been politicized and bought and paid for by billionaires. Let's just fucking be honest. I mean, if you're following that story, it's disgusting what's happening. Why is my green screen keep on going back? You will stay. All right, guys. Sorry about that. 1789 Supreme Court justices changed. People argue right now the Supreme Court is just a mess, bought and paid for. And you could argue it's not balanced. So one could argue that we add justices, especially with some of the gridlock that you have going on. I mean, it's not out of reach. By the way, we've had a surge in population. Does it make sense to have 9 people? Does it make sense to increase that? We'll get into the legislative side. Merit selection in the mid 20th century. Reforms such as the Missouri Plan introduced merit-based judicial selection. The system uses a nonpartisan commission to screen and recommend candidates for judicial appointments. This was interesting, and based on my cursory knowledge, it seemed to be the best way to get the best accountability, was having a panel of professionals that would analyze and appoint that judge for their first term, and then they would have to vie with the public to get elected for the second term. So I gotta get my borders there. I like my borders. So that's something that we could also look at. Not every state does that, by the way, and that was something that requires a board of nonpartisan professionals in the domain in the legal profession who then appoint, and then that person then has to run for reelection to get and apparently 33 states do that, some form of the system. I don't know if PA did. I didn't get down to my research yet. Anyway, I found that interesting. So we've got 5 different things that changed the judicial, and those are significant changes. How judges were selected, to the makeup of the Supreme Court, and you can get into the changes that happened at the district level as well. I didn't go down that far, but that's significant, and it's not scary. And we were America the whole time. So when people talk about restructuring things, we're not talking about doing things different. Even as scary as Donald Trump is, let's hope that those 3 things can hold. What we didn't account for was such a weak legislative branch to hold the executive branch accountable. We didn't expect they would bend over. So there's problems with this system. We counted on non-cowardice. If you didn't watch my show yesterday, go check it out. It's a little slow, but look, I had a green screen on. I was just excited to get on. I've been running up to the wire and getting the show on. Haven't missed yet. But I talk about that in yesterday's thing, and it's important to understand the Republicans played the judicial side of things excellently, and that's where Trump scares me more than the legislative branch not watching him, is some of the plays that he goes against the legislative, and he fights and delegitimizes the court system. And now you have everybody checking, as you almost do now. Well, is the judge a Democrat or Republican? Well, it's a Republican. Ignore it. Doesn't mean anything. And so you have this crazy thing that's going on that Trump's attacking by also having judges to his favor. He can bend them and also delegitimize it at the same time. You're bending the fucking laws of our legal physics, if you will. I'm just going to call it that. I started that, quoted it, legal physics. So let's get into the legislative branch. I said I was going to talk about all 3. Most interesting thing I think we know about, that I did know about, was the direct election of senators. Originally, U.S. senators were also selected by the state legislature. So imagine the time where you're a state legislator, you're a state legislator, and you get elected, and you have the power to not only appoint judges, but you also have the power to appoint senators who are going to be able to help you get your bidding done. So you can imagine you could really grease the wheels of politics if you can pull all those levers as a state legislator, especially considering that nepotism was probably happening, as well as favoritism, as well as backdoor deals. And so you can imagine the slime going on with direct election of senators being the fix originally. The 17th Amendment came in 1913. That established the direct election of senators by popular vote. And it was aimed at addressing the corruption of the time and the democratic accountability of the judges. The process for amending the U.S. Constitution, obviously, we all know about the amendments. Not everybody knows them all. I'm not going to embarrass myself and not list them for you here, even though I have access to the internet and I could just read them off and not look stupid either. But there's a bunch. But that's one way that we've made significant changes. And we know it's tough to get an amendment done. We'll talk about that. We'll get into a whole show about how to get amendment done, because some of the things I would love to see would require an amendment. So we'll talk about that. But amendments are different things that have happened that change the framework, the Bill of Rights. You've got, these things that we count on as things we behold ourselves as Americans, as our birthright, as our citizenship. These are the things that we have amended the Constitution because they missed some things. The 3/5 man is a big one. We know we had to make changes. So people come back and fall back on the Constitution. If you don't know, the Constitution referenced the African man, probably then known as the Negro, as 3/5 of a man, property, as it was stated many, many places and determined that black folk were property. That was in our Constitution. Okay. So stop acting stupid when we talk about amending. Now, there's folks out there, oh, the Constitution. In one side of their mouth, they're talking about holding it in high esteem as the greatest symbol besides the flag. These fucks. You know what I mean? The fucking weird ass symbology. The ideology, the idolatry of symbology in the fucking wacko MAGA crowd. But so that's held in high esteem. But they shit on it. The Constitution's not really held in high esteem. It's just something to pull out to say, oh, I believe in the Constitution. But the Constitution's been amended, and some of the things were wrong, and some of them we had to fix, and yada, yada. So to argue that some amendment is ingrained as well is, one could argue those could be unamended and repealed. One of the other changes I learned about, what I found was interesting, was the changes in House representation. This one's a big one because we are made up differently than we were, significantly than we were even, let's say 75 years ago, let alone 100 years ago. Our makeup, the way we communicate, how we work, what we work on. I mean, computers, go on and on. Do we have the proper representation? The Reapportionment Act of 1929 capped the number of House representatives at 435. It also introduced a process for reapportionment based on census data. So now we do that. We know, we've all heard about the census. And it impacts the legislative representation and electoral dynamic. All they're saying right there is that by changing the House by capping it, it kind of forced a certain process onto how you manage those representatives. And that's one I question. Think about that. We're capping the number of representatives. Even though we have more people, we're limiting the amount of people. It's like these people get more powerful, essentially, having to represent. I mean, some of these states are weirdly powerful, right? If you're in Montana and you have basically nobody in the state, and then you have like 2 senators and a couple representatives, and you're, out of 50 states, you've got this powerful 2 people for this state that's got barely anybody in it. Why only 2 senators? I mean, one could argue, oh, the states represent. I mean, representation makes sense. I do get it. You don't want to necessarily have people voting on every single thing. So representation matters. It makes sense for speed optimization. But you could argue you could have a totally digital system to get rid of any representation. Everyone could have a vote if we really, really wanted it. But of course, representatives would never argue against themselves, just like realtors will never argue against themselves. You're never going to see a realtor argue about lowering the commission. You're never going to see a legislator talking about lowering their salary, getting rid of their job or their district. Oh, yeah, let's just get rid of my district. Nope, not going to happen. Anyway, 2 facts for you. So I think that one's an interesting one we can talk about when we try to buck the system. How many representatives do we have? Term limits. Everyone loves this one. This is a favorite of the right, the Elon Musk crowd, when they're throwing out their fucking libertarian Ian Rand rants about their independence, how they did it all themselves and all this shit and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Term limits. It's I swear to God, I could talk to somebody. I know exactly their politics. Like, term limits, man. Look, I get term limits. If you think term limits are the fucking problem, you don't know anything about Citizens United. You don't know about legalized bribery. Stop. Term limits. Okay. But it does make sense in some things, and they did change it. Term limits for Congress members have been proposed numerous times. They've never been enacted. Of course not at the federal level. Now, many states have implemented term limits for their legislative branch in order to prevent entrenchment and promote political diversity. It does work. There are states that do it. Some states, I remember when I worked for the state, some states are part-time. Some legislators are part-time. They look at PA and you guys are like, whoa, you guys get big bucks for being a state legislator. Some state legislators don't make shit. I went to the, what is it, NAMDA or whatever the fuck, not NAMDA. What the fuck's the state? There's a state legislator group. I don't know why I said NAMDA. I don't know anything about NAMDA. All the fucking, if this would ever go viral, all the people are like, look, man, he said it. He said it. But there's you find out that there's these states, PA is kind of a big dog in the room for pay. And I'm not opposed to big pay for our legislators. I'm okay with them getting paid. So I'd rather have them getting paid well than fucking bribery that they legalized. So term limits is another one that's talked about, not really happening at the federal level. But people like it at the local level. It doesn't necessarily make sense at the federal level for several reasons, but I'm not going to fight on that one. If we have to radically change the system and someone said, hey, you get this, this, and this, but you got to give up term limits. Okay, I'll give up term. All right, whatever. You can term limit people if that's your big thing. I don't care. I mean, you should get stuff done anyway. Maybe that'll speed people up. Obviously, the expansion of power is something that each of the three branches has struggled with, or one could argue, if you did some deep analysis, the executive branch always vying for power. That was a big one. I was researching that, Nixon actually increased the size of the government. Same with FDR, big one with the New Deal. We'll get into that when we talk about executive. But FDR was a big one for the executive because he had 3 terms. So that was something that they had to change. It was customary. It was like, all right, you ran 2 terms. George Washington, all right. Then you just kind of nodded. I ran 2 terms. It's my time to serve as president is done. I shall pass the torch. FDR was like, fuck this. I'm killing it. I'm changing the fabric of society with the New Deal, and people are loving it. I bet you I get reelected again. Boom. They did not like that. They did not like that. Now, I'm not saying the New Deal was good for black people, or I'm not even going to argue about the New Deal and the nuance of it. But FDR ran on that shit, and he, when we talk about the executive branch, if you're following along, I went through the judicial and then the legislative. Now we're at the executive, which is the presidential. And FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, you remember the big deal, big time move towards making funding available for the middle class with different programs. A lot of social programs came from that era. He got elected 3 times, and after that, they added term limits to the presidential as a requirement for presidents, and they made it the 22nd Amendment, 1951. We know the expansion of the judicial agencies is often a thing. That's why Republicans run on the idea that we're going to get rid of the Department of Education and these things, because some of these branches are essentially executive branches. And so what's bullshit is once the president gets to power, they're not going to get rid of those people. They're just going to either gut it or get their bidding done and funnel the money to that thing, to whatever their pet projects are. So this is why you got to watch out for folks that say they hate government. You don't want them running government. If somebody's saying, oh, government's blah, blah, and they're always hating on it, you are government, fix it, stop that bullshit. This is a big one for me. I mean it. It's a frustrating one. I truly, it's why I talked about cowardice yesterday. It's these folks run on these concepts. They don't think about the concepts, and some of them are because they're stupid and they're buying that you're stupid. They're telling you, hey, I'm going to get run on these things. Now, what they're saying is when they get up there, some of these departments that are under their control, they're just going to fire people. They're not going to do it. They're not going to cut departments. And if they do, watch where that money gets funneled to. It's really that easy and simple. So, sure, oh, you could point me to a whole bunch of things. Let's just follow the money. Come on, stop. Come on. It's so fucking stupid. It's really that simple. And that's, one of the things I really want to get into and why I'm starting to dive deeper into this stuff is because we're going to talk. You have to understand how these things work. Then you can understand the impact of some of these laws and why folks that are paying attention, and I'm not necessarily one of them, but rue the day of Citizens United being put into law. And we'll talk about that monumental case, which changed significantly the way campaigns are funded and how that funding is disclosed. The War Powers Act was another one where we're always checking the presidential powers, and that's where Congress is supposed to step in. But God forbid you have a Congress that's licking the boot heels of the president. What kind of check do you have then? I mean, if Republicans take power, my God, and Donald Trump wins, which I've already said he's going to because America's just an idiot. We're going to bang our heads against the wall. We really want to push the limits of we're trying to bend and we want to see it break. I'm hoping it fucking sticks through, but whatever. The shithole ass fuck will be president because people are buying this media narrative. Turn off your TV. Turn it off. Turn off MSNBC. You're not well informed. You're not well informed if you watch CNN. You're not well informed if you're I'm telling you, you're not. I'm not saying I'm well informed. None of us are well informed. So what you have to do is question everything. And it sounds conspiratorial, but you're just more comfortable just saying, all right, well, I got this side. It just reaffirms everything. No, this is real shit. I don't know how I got off on that. But it comes from really the War Powers Act, where you have a Congress that's supposed to check the presidential branch. And it gets scary when you have them just kind of rubber stamping everything. So what I mentioned earlier about Citizens United, you have these three different branches. I'll just kind of sum up. I talked a little bit about some of the different changes that we've seen happen. Judicial branch, we've had from the selection of judges and how they were nominated to elected, to maybe one could argue that there's another way, which some states do, where you have them appointed by a panel. It used to be the American Bar Association would vet these people and say yes or no, and that was kind of a yes or no vote, and Congress would ride it out. It was kind of customary for Congress to give instant approval to nominees, especially judicial nominees. It became more partisan more recently, not all the time, but more significantly, more recently as things became, as one party took initiative to revamp judges. And I'm going to say Republicans are winning in that race. Look into it. I said it before. They killed it with Donald Trump. When I say killed it, they got a lot of judges in place so that these battles that are going to happen in court are going to lean in their favor. You can argue that this activism judges, judicial activism. I agree, but it's the way they played it, and that's the way a system works right now, which, as we've talked about today, if you realize anything I'm talking about today, we had different amount of Supreme judges, okay? 6, 7, 3, 9, 8, 11, 6, 2, whatever the fuck it was. It went up and down. 2 was wrong, but a lot of those numbers I threw out were real. So people lose their shit when people start talking about it. If you care about government, if you're patriotic, you're willing to look at options that are going to keep this system running, especially coming through and coming up with a person that outwardly expects to bend the rule of law to his will. What the fuck? Even if you're on his side, come the fuck on. How is that okay? Well, it's going to be okay. No, it's not. No, it's not. Go look at pictures of Middle East in the 60s and the 50s and 40s, before all the fucked up shit we did over there, when they were wearing miniskirts in Iraq and Iran. And then it's the same shit. When you have authoritarian viewpoints and people that want to infuse theocracy, even to get elected into the populace as a way to placate one demographic over the other, you're going to have chaos. It's never going to work out really well. Look at the Middle East. I want to do something on the Middle East. It's just so exhausting. It's so simple. And you watch people argue. It's just, it's disgusting how simple it is, folks. It really is. I'll do a whole thing on the Middle East. And again, as if I'm going to come up with some intelligent commentary on that. I mean, that's why it's like, come on. Anyway, you know how I go off on my little tangents. But I wanted to talk about change. And these are things that I talked about in 3 different parts of the government that were significant. Maybe they're cheap and easy, which I'm doing because I didn't have a lot of time for research. But I think it's interesting and it's reasonable to consider other ways that you want to change the government without these accusations that you're a communist or you're fucking trying to do whatever. I'm actually saying I love this country and I think the government could be improved. You're saying, well, let's vote people in that want to dismantle it. I mean, what the fuck is that? That doesn't make sense. Let's vote. I'm serious. Your entire party premise is to destroy the government. Why do you elect these people and expect government's going to work for you in any capacity? I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's like the dumbest loop in the world. If you're watching this, anyone, and you have not thought about this, think about that. Think through. You can hate all the liberal woke shit and gets you excited and passionate, but I mean, what the fuck are they doing but conning? It's been a con job. A con job. We have more rich, more homeless people. Look outside. Oh, it's the Democrat. No, it's this trickle down bullshit where we're giving all these rich people tax break and taking money from state governments. We can't fund things. It's not fucking like crazy. Oh, magic. It's the extraction that's happening with us buying into this crazy part. So it's important that you understand the machinations of our government because the rich people do. They take the time. If they don't, they get people that do, or they buy a couple senators. And God forbid you think they really give a fuck who is elected when I'm up here, unless they're religious zealots, which those folks are scary. There are billionaire religious zealots which vote a certain way, and that's just as fucking scary. Why are we okay with this idea that rich people have more influence than poor people? We got away from that whole king thing, the taxation without representation bullshit, craziness. And we're just right back in it. So today's little monologue hopefully just talked about, I'm not finished, but I wanted to get into those topics because I believe we need structural change. Slavery is the easy one when you say, okay, well, you got to really fucking unwind some shit. Well, when I start talking about healthcare and universal healthcare and people not being homeless and people not having food, people think it's a radical thing. Oh, how are you going to pay for it? Look, money is made up anyway. It's made up. We all made it up. Then we look and see, oh, wow, the currency's changing because they agree it's changing. And I know it's more complex than that, but it's really, really made up. I mean, NFTs, if you don't believe shit's not made up, look at NFTs. NFTs were literally fucking digital representation of images and media that you could buy. What do you mean you could buy it? Can't you just take a screenshot of it or maybe copy it? Yeah. But there was $1 billion industry that popped up out of this. Out of nowhere. Nothing. Not tangible. Made up. Completely made up. Billions of people. Some people became millionaires. Some people lost millions. Out of nowhere. Out of nowhere. So, anyway, don't bullshit me on that. But today's lesson, if you will, I'll call it a lesson. Oh, where'd my fancy colors go? I like my colors. Today's lesson was to help us understand the 3 different things and those changes that happen. We're going to talk more about that. The drastic changes are needed. There's drastic changes needed. If we want to have universal health care, we're not going to be able to do things the same way. We don't need 5 PSPs and blah, 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 15 different people. Gosh, the fucking acronyms that people are using. I'm like, it's fucking my doctor. Stop making all these weird shits up for this weird ass thing that's just tell my doctor, I want to know I'm better. Why does who are you guys again? What the fuck am I on the phone with these people? I just want to get this medicine my doctor said I can do. If you don't experience the American healthcare system and go through this, you're totally lying. You're lying. Or you have somebody doing it for you, or your wife runs it for you, or your husband gets it for you, or whatever. But it's a shit show. It's totally shit. And God forbid those folks that watch that still work in the pharmaceutical company, God forbid, you are wasting your fucking time with writing software. It's shit. It doesn't, no one's using it. You're not benefiting anybody. Quit your job. Seriously. It's useless. I might be biased, but I'm serious. No, it doesn't mean the pharmaceutical company as entire industry needs to go away, but we'll get into that. We can really dive deep. I mean, there's tons of documentaries on that shit. Purdue, dope. People are winning Oscars for depicting different characters depending on the movie of dope, and the pharmaceutical industry's play on that. But I digress. Circling back to our topic at hand, change, how it happened, why it matters. Citizen United, by the way, I'm just going to touch on it. Essentially what it did is, I just wanted, since I brought it up, it was a Supreme Court decision, and it was a ruling that allowed corporations, unions, or any kind of agency or organization to spend unlimited amounts of money on political campaigns. And I believe that it allowed them to not have to disclose it. Or if they did have to disclose it, it could be disclosed through LLCs and hidden. And so the amount could be hidden, but also it meant unlimited amounts. So what that meant was essentially wealthy people could spend as much as they want to support or oppose any political organization or any political activism that they want. And so what they would do is they bundle their money into PACs, political action committees, and then super PACs, which are a bunch of political action committees, all bundled into one, big money, which then they could spend however they want. Donald Trump's right now using Republican campaign funds to fund his fucking legal campaign. It's on the front page of everywhere. So it's crazy. Citizen United was important because it went through, there could have been laws written. I talked about this, the legislative, the judicial, and the presidential, the executive. Citizen United got put into law through a conservative bench that believed that free speech is the same as money. So the court decided that restricting any expenditures would violate the First Amendment right to free speech. So rich people's way of saying, hey, look, if you make it so that I can't give as much money as I want, you're limiting my ability to express myself. And so therefore you're limiting my free speech. Therefore I declare, right? I got the vapors. I mean, what the fuck? Now, if you don't have any money, what does that mean? You don't have shit for political speech. You don't have free speech. Freedom of speech, let's say. I'm sorry. It's not free speech. It's freedom of speech. Isn't that funny? So I want to be able to give as much money to the candidate of my choice because it is part of my right to the freedom of speech. Can you believe that we're stating two oxymoronic things at the same time, suggesting while simultaneously suggesting something is free, gratis, no cost, free as in beer. On the other end of that, in the same statement, saying that I'm paying unlimited amounts to this person so that I can have that freedom. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Just break down the words. It's fucking weird. Rich people fucking befuddled us. We're literally saying to ourselves, and we've accepted this as reality, that a rich person is limiting their freedom of expression because they're not allowed to give as much money to they want as to a candidate, and a candidate can receive it. If you're okay with that, it makes no sense. You're okay with that, then good luck. Jeff, just go make friends. No wonder you're bootlicking Elon and Jeff Bezos, because that's their guy. That's our representation, I guess. Oy vey. Oy vey. All right, let me get back into it. Oh, the Reapportionment Act of 1920 I found interesting. That was where they put the cap on the number of representatives. I found that interesting because I truly think we're in a position where we need to increase the amount of representation. Right now, if we do a census and you go back 100 years, 200 years, you had better representation per capita. Legislator per capita was better. Let's say it was 1 to 50,000. What is it now? You can do the math again. I don't do math when I'm talking. There are disconnects. I have to shut this side of the brain off to do math. I'm not going to try to do it while I'm talking. We know I fail. But we have more people now. So you'd presume if we had 100, in 19, what was it? 1929, we've had significant population growth in the United States since then. Let's just do a quick Google search. Fuck it. Let's do it live, folks. Do it live. You know what? I might not have hit go live. Oh, I did. All right. So let me see. Oh, 1999. So we're looking up 1929. See, I have ADHD so bad that I forget what I'm looking up. All right. Yeah, so they changed it several times. So let's just see. Hold on. Population. So 1929, it was 121 million. It's 333. So we doubled. We doubled in size. Okay, more than doubled in size since more than that. All right. So there you go. We have 435 people and we've doubled in size. One could make a strong argument that we need to change our the number of representatives that we have. I mean, specifically in high populated areas. We know how gerrymandered the bullshit is. PA was on the Daily Show, I believe, for how bad it was gerrymandered, or John Oliver, one of the two. So that one's an interesting one we can talk about down the road. We have a lot of arguments for that one. So these were some basic ones. This wasn't spicy today. I'm going to wrap because I'm going to put a bow on this so that we can kind of make sure that this was coherent. We can get some snips out of this. I know nobody listens to the whole thing. Very few people listen to the whole thing. But if you happen to listen to the whole thing, please leave a comment and say, hey, I like your rounded corners, and maybe leave a fist. Let me know you watched the whole thing. I don't care if you do or don't. Really looking for the comments because I really want to know what you think of my little rounded corners. I also want to know, oh man, I'm sorry that I put that. Did I have the wrong screen on Instagram? Hold on. Let me just see something. If I can, you guys, poor guys on Instagram. You guys on the Instagram on my Nate personal account just saw like a weird ass screen the whole time. It's one of those days, folks. I do want you to comment. It's important. It's really important that you engage. I'm not going to lie, folks. I know I do this every night, but things are going well. I don't want to jinx myself. It's really going well. It may not seem like it even when I have a bad night, when I'm maybe not coherent. Maybe things don't look okay. For some reason, though, those videos do well. I'm surprised, right? When I have a shitty night or I say something really embarrassing, I watch the fucking view count go up. I'm like, fuck. And I refuse to delete it. It's live. That is going to be my future. I am going to become known as the person who goes live unscripted or scripted, but it's live. One take, Nate. That's what we're doing. So folks that want to come on and interview, do not expect to get edited. I'm going to do it live. I know that sounds funny, but I'm branding myself that way, and I think it's nice. Plus, the rounded corners are going to shoot me into the stratosphere, so please make a comment. Let me know if you haven't noticed. I can do all kinds of crazy things here. I can basically do amazing, awesome, cool stuff. Now, this one's probably one of my favorite. I like that one. Anyway, so leave a comment for the rounded edges. But more importantly, give me a shout if you think anything made sense tonight. If you learned something, let me know. I mean, even if you don't feel like commenting publicly, shoot me a DM and say, hey, that was interesting, or what about this, or wow, you really dropped the ball there. Everything I said tonight's based on facts that I researched. Again, I can't spend all day on this. It's like not like I'm doing a whole thing. And I don't want you to think I cheese out on it, because I truly am proud of the fact that I improve every single fucking week in every single way. So I am not scared. I am not scared to look at the criticisms in the inbox. And if you don't like something or you want me to talk about something, that's fine. We are going to be shaping this format to be more fun, and we're going to get on the YouTube charts. It's a matter of time. You could be number 50. I will say, I don't know if I could do something special for number 50, because every other person that's subscribed is special to me. But I'm thinking maybe when I see that 50th subscriber, maybe I'll have to do something special. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to YouTube right now, subscribe to Smashing the Party, do a search for it, dig for it, find it, look for it. I'm going to get to 100 by the end of the year. Oh, I said it. That's the goal, 100 YouTube followers by the end of the year. Come on, folks. Come on. If every one of you follow, it's great. But other than that, I'm doing really good, and I want to say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love doing it. I look forward to it. Day goes by fast, and next thing you know, it's time to do this, and I love it every single time. Even when I'm unpolished, getting to do my dream. This is my dream. Right now, this is Nate Bomberger, little boy, wanting to fucking be, for you guys, what the fuck are you talking about? All right, I talk about my little boy self a couple times, and so I'm just hearkening back to that. But I also get soft-hearted when it comes to dreams. And so I'm letting you know that I'm going to be ecstatic when I get to the point of reaching my dream, which is going to be 10,000 YouTube followers, by the way. That's the dream. But for now, we want to get to 100. I'll be excited about that. And I love every moment of it. Of course, this is about me talking and me growing my personality and me letting the world know who the fuck I am. I understand it. It's probably annoying to some of you. If you got this far and you're like, damn, dude, calm the fuck down. You're good. Chill, man. I always apologize. I don't care. The whole thing is, it is tough to put yourself out there on camera, live, 4 days a week. So if you can't give me a like for that, fuck off. I'm going to keep growing anyway. I'll keep stepping into new departments, new areas. I'm already pitching and pushing stuff in Atlanta. Then I'm going to hit Philly. Then I'm going to hit New York. Then I'm going to hit Chicago. I'm in LA. Of course, I started in Lancaster. So I'm reaching out to my Lancaster folks before I move on to the next town. Make sure you follow. Get on the train now. Choo-choo. Chugga, choo-choo. Thanks for listening. Make sure you tune in tomorrow at 10:30 p.m. Always, always, always like, subscribe, follow. Make sure you tell your friends. I'm growing. I am not a radio caster. I'm not hired professionally. I have no formal training. You're watching somebody grow in real time, and it's going to be fantastic when you come back in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and you see where the fuck I land. Get on the train. I love you guys. I really appreciate it. I do promise you I will get better at bringing the spice. Today, I needed to lean into some academia, provide a little context for the further conversations I want to have with you as we grow And that is, if we understand how the machinations work, come back to this episode for the machinations. If we understand how the machinations work, then we can start to understand how the levers are being pulled and not just fall for the bullshit. All right. So today was Daddy, Papa Nate, teacher, professor, whatever it was, giving you a lesson right right from my computer. Again, no formal training here. I'm bragging about that, okay? Apparently that's like bragging rights in conservative circles is you get far by saying, I just don't education. I didn't educate myself. I'm just doing it, by the way. So there you go, folks. A little tiny research, put the show together. Keep following along. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. I can't say it enough. Thank you. I love this. I really do feel fulfilled when I get off the mic at night. Even on a bad night, it's nice to look back and appreciate that there's somebody out there that gets a little something, takes a little moment of their time to watch. And I love it. So thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to leave you with that. Hopefully, we had sound. Good night. Let's do a fist bump close. No.